Adrian, you are up last, sir.
Yeah, hi Bart.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Adrian, have you called the show before? You're the first time caller, right?
Yeah, first time caller. Chatted to you many times on Discord.
Yeah. So, Adrian, you say you live in Sydney now?
Melbourne. This is a call from Crown Casino,
Oh,
Melbourne.
okay. So I was saying, like, I've been to Australia one time. I played at Aussie Millions in 2008. But Adrian is quite active on the CLP Discord. He's been a subscriber for a couple of years. I asked Adrian about if it was cool to talk about this. I wasn't like huge into Magic cards. Like, I played in 1994 when I was like a sophomore in high school. But there were quite a few poker players that actually came out of Magic, the Gathering, that card game. And I got into Magic for a couple of years when I was in high school, but right after, like, I got in, like, if people know Magic cards, like the Revised, which is I think the third or fourth series, really right when like the cards didn't have a ton of value. I still have some old cards. I have some dual lands. I know that like worth $400 or $500, but Adrian, if anybody's into Magic, I thought this was incredible. You have a couple of Beta Series Black Lotus cards, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I have a playing copy that's sort of like mid-play, and then I have a BGS 9 graded Beta Lotus. I have a full set of actually the beta set, all 305 cards in basically close to near mint condition, with like Black Lotus is obviously the pinnacle card, but the rest of the Power 9 is are
Right.
all I have two full sets of Power. So I have a playing set which is all played, and then I have a graded set as well.
What is the other? What was name some of those cards in the Power 9? Nox or something?
Yeah, so there's the 5 Moxes. So,
Moxes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So there's one for each of the color in Magic,
Right.
and then there's the 3 big blue cards as well, which are Ancestral Recall, Time Walker, and Time Twister.
How much is that a Black Lotus worth, a Beta Black Lotus?
So my played copy is probably about $25,000 to $30,000, and my graded one would be $50,000 to $60,000.
Wow! And you're just into collectibles, like you bought that from a dealer or something like that?
Well, I started playing Magic about the same time as you did. I sold it a couple of times, and then in the early 2010s, I walked past a game store and they had a Lotus in there. It was an unlimited one, played condition. I always wanted to own a Lotus, so I walked in and bought it, and then just started upgrading since then.
You bought an unlimited Black Lotus?
Yeah, in 2011.
Which is like the third series behind.
That is, yes.
There's no like unopened boxes of like the beta set around anywhere, right? That's just something that doesn't exist, right?
Oh, no, there absolutely is.
Wow.
Yeah, so my best friend has probably one of the best collections in the world, and he had an unopened box of beta. Arabian Nights, for example, is the second set.
Yep.
He had several boxes of that unopened. He bought them later in life as well.
Wow.
He's probably one of the biggest collections in the world.
You know what got me, and then we'll get on to the poker. I bought some stupid, like I was looking through my old Magic cards, and I don't know if you even know what I'll be talking about here, but I was looking through some of my old Magic cards like 4 or 5 years ago, and then I was looking at some cards, and it's got like Arabian Nights on the bottom. Like I didn't know what I had some stupid Ice Age and like Fallen Empires, like these shitty like booster series things. But I was looking at this, I was like, that's Arabian Nights. And then I had another one that was like Chronicles. But there was some like mimic set that was put out like in between like Revised and like the 4th edition that were just like copies of like Arabian Nights and Ice Age, and they weren't part of the actual those sets, but they kind of copied them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a reprint set. They're pretty common nowadays, but back in those days, Chronicles was the very first ever reprint set.
Fucking Chronicles. All right, Adrian, let's get into the poker. I got really excited for about 5 minutes until I figured out what I didn't have. All right, so let's get into the poker. So you're playing out of Crown Melbourne, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And little context on the games at Crown. So they're all what they call turbo. So you've got 10 seconds to act and then 10 seconds on the clock. So it does change the dynamic a little, that you've only, on every street, you've only got 20 seconds to act.
Like in just a regular cash game?
Yeah.
Who manages the clock? Because that's always been the biggest concern that I've seen like around Twitter and stuff from high stakes players or just anybody, where oh, we should have a shot clock at the World Series. And then the inevitable question comes, who is going to manage the shot clock? And what does it mean, like, if it goes down to zero? Like, are we giving the power to somebody who's a dealer? And a lot of the dealers at the World Series haven't even dealt before it to declare your hand dead.
So the first 10 seconds of the shot clock is subjective for the dealer. And the dealers are good particularly with the regs when there's big pots. They make those 10 seconds closer to 15, maybe 20 seconds sometimes. But the second 10 seconds is they actually have a proper shot clock on their table and they press it. And if it goes beep, your hand is dead instantly. No.
But who makes the judgment call of whether or not you made an action before it goes beep? Like if it's really close.
The dealer and all the players would speak up.
Okay, so it's like a consensus.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people shove their chips in, like as it's beeping, but because they'd started the action before the sound, it was ruled as very clearly an all-in.
I mean, I would love it if they came up with something like this as we move towards more automation just in life. If they came up with some sort of automated shot clock, not just for the World Series, but all tournament poker, they would just need to come up with a system that would fairly enforce it, I guess is what I would say. And I haven't seen anything that has suggested that they can do that yet. So anyways, all right, what's the size of the game?
It's 2-5-10, 1925 effective.
1925 effective.
So me and the villain in this hand are the two biggest stacks at the table by a long way.
Okay.
And the straddle is only on two hands a rotation.
So it's mostly 2-5.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now is it
1K buy-in?
Now is this hand that we're going to talk about with the 10 though?
Yes, this hand is with the 10.
Okay.
And it's the two biggest stacks at the table.
Okay. So start us off here, pre.
So there's two limps up front. I'm on the button, and I look down at the two black queens.
Two limpers at 5-10 at 2-5-10. And
there's 2-5-10, yep.
Hero with queen of clubs, queen of spades, okay. And you raise to
55.
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't know what people are opening to straight at 2-5-10, if it's 30 or 35, but that's fine over two limpers, sure.
So most of the table opens to 40 over at 2-5-10. I follow Nate's advice and I actually size down slightly to 35 is my normal, so two limps is 55.
Well, by the way, Nate was actually I would never have figured Nate for like a Magic guy, but he's getting quite excited. He was quite excited over in the live chat he said, well, "What's this guy's name on Discord?" So you guys you can talk to him after this. All right, so hero queen raise to 55 over two limpers, okay.
Villain is in the small blind and he pops it to 200.
3-bet to 200, okay.
Yep.
Fold.
It folds to me.
Yeah.
And then I decide to call.
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, that's there's probably some four-betting here that's going to go on. I mean, there's the two limpers sort of you're on the button, right? I just want to put that out there. Right. Like, say, for example, this is how this thing will change a little bit. Say, for example, there weren't two limpers and you just opened on the button, right? And the small blind 3-bet you. You're probably going to be doing some four-betting, right, with queen, I would assume?
Yes, definitely. That was the difference for me, was the fact that the two people had already folded because the dead money in the middle. And I also figured that when we were so deep, I would rather take a pot in position with this hand, because if I 4-bet, he's just going to fold out all his bluffs. A little bit of context on this: the villain as well. He's sort of like a reg, like, knows everyone in the room. He's reasonably new to our table, and he's been on a hell of a heater since he's been at our table. He's only been at our table about 10 hands, and he's effectively put $1,000 into his stack during that time. And he's not nitty, but he's also not an action player. So he'll find bluffs.
The only thing I would say about that, Adrian, the one exception I take, though, I don't think that anything that you said was wrong necessarily, taking a flop, not trying to get his bluffs to fold out. But that doesn't change anything, though, whether there's two limpers or not, right? Like, I don't know why you would 4-bet if it was just a straight open on the button versus small blind based upon what you just said. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's all those things are still there about taking a flop in position and being deep.
Sorry, yes, yeah, no, I agree with you. I figured he was more incentivized
To 3-bet
to three bet with
with 2 limpers in there.
yes, exactly, because he didn't want to be in the pot with a king jack of hearts, for
Right.
example, and squeezed.
Sure. So he should be V-pipping pretty much as a 3-better fold. A lot of people just play 3-better fold anyways versus late position open in a 2-blind game. He should be doing that anyways in a 3-blind game. It gets more extreme with the limpers out there. But I will say, though, that you could make an argument that should make you want to 4-bet more here in this spot. But we've talked enough about that. It's 4-10 to the flop. Okay.
Yeah. So the flop is the 10 of spades, 9 of hearts, 4 of clubs.
10 of spades, 9 of hearts, 4 of clubs. Okay.
And then the villain, with very little thought, like very, very fast, cuts out 175 and bets.
That's 175, which is kind of an in-betweenish type of bet here that's a little bit over 30, a little bit less than half. So it's definitely not a C-bet 100 board. I mean, there's not a 2 flush out there, but if he's going to play a V-pip pretty much 3-better fold strategy, he's got 10s and 9s. You've got 10s and 9s. You might have more 4-4 than him, and you probably have more 10-9 suited than him too, just, looking at this. And he's got, probably like aces and kings more often than you. Obviously, you're going to call here, right?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. I figured that there was no other reason, nothing else to do but call here.
Okay, so you make the call, you put 350 here in on the flop, so the pot is 760. Okay.
Yes, and then the turn comes out, the 9 of diamonds.
10 of spades, 9 of hearts, 4 of clubs, turns the 9 of diamonds, and this is not the tightest. We've had several calls here dealing with very tight configurations. This is not the tightest configuration because it's button versus small blind, so that's not going to be the best card for him here. You're going to have more 9x definitely than he is. So just because if he were to check here, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have anything. You know what I mean?
Absolutely what I thought as well. And by the way, he does check.
Okay, so now you're at your sort of inflection point. This is where I can use this term, variable turn sizing. Variable turn sizing is, again, like a term that I kind of just made up. And what it means is just like when you get check 2 on the turn, when you don't have the betting lead, using like a 1/3 type of sizing in position with the wide variety of holdings that you end up with, which could be draws, floats, like queen jack, some floats, if the spot sizing was very, very small, some protectionish types of medium strength hands like 10x, or I think your hand actually falls into this category, and then like some, thick value that might have been sort of slow played here. I kind of want to bet a little bit for protection. You don't have to go super large. I kind of want to bet like maybe like 250. And the reason why in live poker is because to check behind here, I think becomes a play. It's not necessarily for pot control, but you always want the opponent to have some sort of frequency of bluffing the river when you check behind on the turn. And it's hard to sort of visualize that when you don't have the betting lead because he's checked to you. So if you can kind of picture like if he's never going to bluff the river, then checking the turn with somewhat of a vulnerable hand doesn't really have a ton of value. I think it should be bet more often because when you look at it, it's like, well, I'm not betting here because I want to induce a bluff at the end. So I don't want to bet and just have him fold. Like I lose money. But if he's not going to bluff the end, then there's no point. So I don't know if this was, or excuse me, if you do check back, I don't even know what you do. But there's a lot of people that do check back here and they're like, oh, I'm checking back for like pot control. I'm like, really? If you're concerned about the pot control, you could just bet 250 and go to showdown at the end,
Yeah, so I did check, but I checked for the reverse reason. This player will absolutely bluff missed rivers.
You mean you think he just might blindly bet at the end when you check back?
Oh, yeah. No, I've played with him a couple of times before. And it's not blindly. He will be betting logically. But yeah, he's not going to leave his soldiers out there in the middle alone.
Well, I mean, then if that's the case, I don't know if you can fold to any river. You know what I mean? I mean, the rivers that suck, if you're going to play it this way, the rivers that kind of suck for you are obviously like an ace or a king, and you kind of get taken to town. And I think an ace is a lot worse than a king, just because people did structure like they're 3-betting with ace X like a whole lot and you get taken to value town. But if you're going to play it that way, then I don't see how you could pretty much fold to any bet at the end, no matter what comes. I'll just, again, play a little bit of devil's advocate with you. Does that mean that you're checking back with super thick value then here too? Like if you had 10-9 or quad nines or 10-10 or something like that?
Yes, versus this opponent in this configuration, I check that there as well.
Okay, well, that makes sense at least. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's a check 100 spot right there.
A check 100 spot when you're check 2 on the turn. Interesting. I'm not raising
versus this particular opponent with this stack depth and things like that.
Okay, so what's the river?
The river is the 9 of diamonds. No, sorry, that was the turn. 9 of spades.
All right. Oh, okay. So it's 10-9, 4, 9-9. So you have an overpair, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he checked the turn. Okay. Now what happens?
The villain leads $650 into me.
Well, talk about polarity here. If he's as wild as you say he is in the given spot, he's going to have a lot of bluffs here. And the reason why that comes in, people are like, oh, he's going to have a lot of bluffs. That's great. Sure, it's great for calling. It's not great for raising, though. The calling equation is different than the raising equation, right? Like he's betting, let's say he's betting pot, right? Well, then you need to be good 1 out of 3 times, right? But then when you start to put in a raise amount, now you're only giving yourself 1-1. People don't think about this. Like when you put in the extra bet on the river, like in this form, it's a raise. You are almost like raising a dry side pot. It's like playing a side pot when you put the extra bet in, whether it's raising the river or if he checked to you, betting. That's like betting into a dry side pot because you could just check back behind and realize. I'm talking about when you bet for value. When you bet for value or raise for value, it's like betting or raising into a dry side pot when you're last to act on the river. If you follow what I'm saying. My inclination here, though, is that if he's so wild and he has so many bluffs, this is super polar. So I can't imagine any decision point besides call unless somehow you thought that he had enough 10x or jacks in here that you could jam and get called by those holdings.
Yeah, so once again, I only have 20 seconds to act here at this point in time. My quick math was that I get beat by 16 combos. Sorry, 16 combos, which is the aces, the kings,
6, 12,
the 10s.
6, 12, 15, yep.
And
quad nines. Ace 9. Oh, yeah, you can't have quad. Ace 9 for quad nines. Right.
Yeah, and I think his bluffs are, he's probably aware that ace king's no good here. He's probably aware that king queen's no good here. So he's going to go with both those, and I gave him both those at 50%. And then his value is he could be betting here with ace 10 and be betting with jacks.
Well, I mean, you only need to find a ratio of 2, whatever that is, whether it's a bluff or him value cutting himself, right? If you're getting actually more than 2-1, but even if you were to get 2-1, you would just need to find 8 out of those 16 to make it a break-even call. I mean, that's the math on that, right?
Yes, yeah. So it was clear-cut call. But main reason why I submitted this was I actually wanted to hear your logic as to whether I should be raising here, because I got to very rapidly did the math that it was clearly a call, and then wanted to know whether I should be value raising, and your context there about being a dry side pot that would be 1-1, there wouldn't be enough value, because I think the only thing that calls me that I have beat on that point in time is probably the jacks, because all the hands that obviously beat me call.
I'll throw a twist at you though, Adrian. I'll make it more interesting. Let's say he bets 225 on the river instead of 650. I mean, here I think everyone's like call. It just becomes, because like a lot of those hands I don't know if 10x takes this sizing. Maybe jacks like some of the time, but let's say he goes like 225. Same action and he goes 225 at the end, 225 into 760.
I have to raise, I think.
It's a lot closer. You would think, just based upon like live patterns, that somebody who has an overpair who beats a 10 would go larger at the end than say like than 225. So if you pick up on live patterns, you're like, well, when I see this type of sizing here, it's almost always going to be, it's going to be, even if it's value, it's a hand that's worse than queen, queen. Then if you think you can get called by worse more than 50% of the time, sure, that you can raise. But that's the whole difference with this hand, is that once he takes this type of large sizing at the end, I think that the range of value becomes much more, I would say, compressed, or there's just less of it, which lends itself to just be a call at the end.
Yeah, and I did call.
And
He's got pocket tens.
oh, 10-10, huh?
Yep.
So he bowed in on the turn. It's interesting when you get into, I'm just thinking out loud from your opponent's perspective. Like I always like to try to put money in with good hands, right? You guys are somewhat deep, and I'm not a huge fan of slow playing. If he gets to the turn with tens full here, he just blocks all the top pair. So it's a little bit unfortunate. See, this is a spot where, like, sort of going back to one of the earlier live streams, hands that we put up, that we talked about, which was, I don't know what order this will come out on YouTube, the Ace King of Spades hand. Maybe we'll put a link to it in the description if it's already up. The smaller the bet sizing on the flop from your opponent with 10-10, like say he bet like 125, the more he probably should be checking the turn, and the larger the bet sizing that he uses, the more he should actually be betting the turn. Now that's a little bit counterintuitive, but it's because of the fact that if he uses a larger bet sizing on the flop, you don't have a lot of these light floats that need to start bluffing on the turn. You are more skewed towards some sort of made hand that's probably still not going to fold on the turn. So larger bet sizing, if you use it on the flop with tens full on turn, he probably should continue betting. Smaller, I think, should be reflected with more of a check.
Yeah, if he bets that turn, he gets my whole stack. So he left $900 on the table.
You had how much going to the turn? You had
1,500 because it was 650 on the river.
So you're saying that if he goes like five, if he goes 500 on turn, you call, and then he shoves the river, you're just going to call, close your eyes and call.
Probably have to.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the call, Adrian, and that story about the Black Lotus. By the way, do you remember? I'm going to nerd out on you more. There was a kid that had a really, really good Magic collection in the early 90s that I knew in high school, right? Like he got in early. He bought like a bunch of like dual lands for like $2. He swore up and down the best next thing was going to be a game called Jihad. Have you even ever heard of that before? Card game called Jihad?
Yeah.
He sold all his Magic cards to buy Jihad cards, and that game isn't worth shit now, right?
Yep, that is correct. And we've seen that play out several other times where other new games that are going to be the Magic Killer come up and people have sold out, and then 2 to 5 years later they come back to Magic and then just have to rebuy everything a bit more expensive.
Interesting stuff. Thank you very much for the call, Adrian. I appreciate it.